Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa. Welcome to Threshold of Hope, where we take a look at the writings of the church. Before we get to the text today, I just want to mention that today is the feast of a blessed. He's not yet canonized. His name is Blessed Bernardo Francisco Javier de Hoyos. He was a Jesuit born in 1711, and for various reasons, he was ordained at a very early age, only 24, which is young. As a matter of fact, he had to get special permission to be ordained that age. 25 is the general minimum in law. But he got permission and was ordained, and didn't live too much longer after his ordination. Died as a very young priest. But he had a very strong devotion to the Sacred Heart. And this is not too long after the time of Saint Claude de la Colombière, the Jesuit who took the messages from Saint Margaret Mary to the rest of the world, and who was instrumental in getting it made into a feast around the world. Bernardo de Hoyos was very instrumental in helping to promote at this early stage. And as time went on, the devotion to the Sacred Heart became a special commission of the Society of Jesus, which it remains to this day. So this is something we want to celebrate, and hopefully he'll also be canonized. All right, we are continuing on with Veritatis Splendor, the Splendor of Truth. You can still get a paperback copy from EWTN's religious catalog. Either online, go to EWTNRC.com, or you can call them 1-800-854-6316. If you would like, you can download a free electronic copy of Veritatis Splendor by going to our document library and the website, EWTN.com. Download it to your computer and either read from the computer or print it out and join us. Now, of course, we love having you be involved and participate in our show. You can do like all these nice folks have come, mostly from Florida, and join us in the studio audience right here in beautiful Irondale, Alabama, next door to Birmingham. Or you can send us a question by email, writing to threshold@ewtn.com. Or if you prefer, you can call us during our live broadcast, which is Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The phone number in North America is 1-800-221-9460. If you're outside North America, you can call 205-271-2980, and the country code is 1. We are on paragraph 112, talking about the role of moral theologians. These are the theologians who teach morality. Okay? And with Pope St. John Paul, we started talking about this in the previous couple weeks, but the moral theologian must exercise careful discernment in the context of today's prevalently scientific and technical culture. I mean, people have a lot of respect for scientists and the technical folks. Look at all the great inventions and great scientific discoveries that have come. And a lot of times, people respect science more than they do religion, even though science is able to do certain tasks. There's some things science can do, some things it can't. Through science, you can know somebody on the inside if you get an X-ray, but only if you enter into a personal relationship with that person can you know their personality. No X-ray or other scientific technique can help you know the depths of somebody else's personality. And that's normal. So we don't expect science to reveal to you what people are like and what their personality is. But if you want to find out if they have cancer or pneumonia or broken bones, use an X-ray. And that'll give you another view of the inside out. Okay? So again, we take a look at that and appreciate what it can do, but also remind ourselves certain things science can't do. And the problem is when people put science as the only basis for what they accept is true. I won't accept anything else true unless you can prove it by science. Well, all right, how do you prove by science that your mother loves you? Especially when you're 13 or 14. That's mom's laughing. You take it on an act of faith that your mother loves you at that age, despite your behavior. But if you look, science is the only thing that you accept, you're going to miss some of the more important realities of life. Again, science has important roles. So do technology. But as we've talked about earlier in this encyclical, science and technology needs to be guided by values. Consider how improved technology made it possible to execute more people in the Nazi concentration camps. Didn't we arrest and convict and even execute the criminals who used science in that way that we now recognize as perverted? That was an evil use of science to develop a gas to kill millions of people. And science needs direction. Remember also, there was a Dr. Mengele, who was a medical doctor, MD. He was doing research in Auschwitz concentration camp, but it was evil research. That was merely his own way to torture people. And so that's why we have to be careful. Well, it's just pure science. No, there's no such thing. Science has goals and science has values, whether the scientist admits it or not. And if you have only science, that's where you start to become relativistic. Well, science says that you should do this. Well, I've grown up, over the last 67 years. Coffee is good for you. Coffee is bad for you. Coffee is good for you. Coffee is bad for you. Coffee is good for you. Coffee is bad for you. How many times have they gone back and forth? And and then remember the days when get rid of all fats. No, you need some fats. And if you apply that to ethics, you become relativistic. That's the difficulty. And again, I want scientists to investigate coffee. I'll have a cup of it with them. I like coffee. And but we can't base our values just on science. Also becomes pragmatic. If you can do something, therefore you ought to. As we saw, people said, well, we can clone, or not clone, we can clone, but also I was thinking of taking stem cells from embryos and we use it for medicine. But that wasn't right because you had to kill the embryos to get them. If you want some of my stem cells, you can ask me. But you can't kill somebody else, even if they're at an embryonic stage, to get stuff that's useful for you, because other people are not your tools. That's where the pragmatic quality becomes immoral. And the same and positivistic. Well, studies show that people have started committing certain sins in large numbers. Surveys show, and we'll talk more about that today. Surveys show that people are committing sins a lot. Okay? Therefore, it's okay. No, I can show you surveys that everybody tells lies. That's practically 100%. Do you want people to lie to you? No. Of course we don't. It's the last thing we want. And often, how many times when kids lie, it's bad enough when they do something wrong, but then when they lie, that makes it worse, doesn't it? And that hurts more than what they did because they were dumb. And especially when they're secondly dumb because they're not good liars. And you catch them every time, almost every time. And so, just because a survey shows you that everybody lies, that doesn't make it right. And just because surveys show that a majority of people are living together before they get married, that doesn't make it right either. A survey might show a large number of people cheat on tests, cheat on their taxes, steal from their companies, but that doesn't make it right. That's where positivism is incorrect. We need other criteria. From the theological viewpoint, moral principles do not depend upon the historical moment. Again, don't we always hear, well, the times have changed. It's okay if you live with your boyfriend and girlfriend. It's all right. Well, actually, what is there that's different about the way times have changed to make that a good thing? Especially when I can also show you that 60% of the couples who do live together end up getting divorced anyway. So that's not a help. It's not a basis for a moral norm because the times have changed. Moreover, the fact that some believers act without following the magisterium. So again, there are lots of surveys of how many Catholics support abortion. Right? You've heard that. Well, you can also point out that despite, and we did this earlier this year, but that despite papal teaching that slavery was a mortal sin, enslaving other people was a mortal sin, and that the popes excommunicated the slave trade automatically, there were lots of Catholics who said that it was okay to steal other people from their homes and bring them to the Americas as slaves. And there were theologians who went along with it. Did that make it morally okay? Not in the least. They were still excommunicated, and they were still in a state of mortal sin. And those poor slaves, many of whom died because they were enslaved, and whose freedom was taken away, their property was taken away, their personal rights and dignity were taken away. That is not made morally right just because a lot of people approved of it. And people in the matter of fact, remember the popes made that condemnation in 1435. And all the way until slavery was officially abolished in the 1800s, the popes kept saying it was wrong because of the principles of human dignity being greater than economics. And people say, well, the Pope doesn't understand the economic needs. No, what he understood is you're violating human dignity. And the same principle applies to abortion. Even if Catholics were, and it's not a majority, it's a lot of Catholics, especially those who do not practice their faith, that approve of it. While practicing Catholics disapprove of it in the vast majority. So it makes a difference if they're practicing going to Mass on Sunday. And, well, Mass attendance is also down. Does it mean therefore it's okay to miss Mass on Sunday since we're only down to about 30% of Catholics going to Mass every week? No, it doesn't make it right. So we don't make those kind of decisions even when Catholics don't follow the magisterium or when they consider something morally correct, any kind of behavior declared by their pastors as contrary to the law of God, like living together before marriage. This is something that people don't always even understand that it's wrong. Some people don't realize that that's a sin. But that doesn't change the sinful nature of it. Still wrong. You cannot have a valid argument to reject the truth of the moral norms taught by the church just on the basis of statistics and science. Doesn't change that. The affirmation of moral principles is not within the competence of formal empirical methods. In other words, you don't take surveys to determine morality. If you did, what would the surveys have been like about arresting Jews in Europe in the 1930s? Would that have made it right? No. No. Not at all. Ever. And this is something that we also have to keep in mind. A key example of this is the research done by Alfred Kinsey on his report on male sexuality in 1948 and his report on female sexuality in 1953. That those two reports, because they were scientific, they were used not only by Playboy magazine. Playboy magazine in its first edition justified, we're providing a service because Kinsey showed people need to have pornography. So that's why they got started. And then the Playboy Foundation became one of the biggest supporters of not only the Kinsey Institute at the University of Indiana, but also of the research part of SICUS. You ever hear SICUS? SIECUS? Sex Information and Education Committee of the United States. These are the people who write the sexual education books for our schools. And in Kinsey's report, for one thing, it was bad science. And part of it was also criminal science, because they had 9 people, presumably I think they were men, who sexually abused 400 boys aged 2 months to 14 years old for the research. And then the conclusion was that kind of sexual behavior with these children was good for the kids. That was the research. That's evil research and illegal. Where was the FBI with a battering ram at the doors of the office of the Kinsey Institute to arrest everybody until they got the records and everything else? Should have gone with a warrant and arrested folks and sorted all this. Who were these criminals? There's a great researcher, Dr. Judith Reisman. Dr. Judith Reisman, R-E-I-S-M-A-N. Want to see the research on that? And how it's corrupted not only the sex education programs, but also our government. Because legislatures at the state and federal level use the Kinsey report to change the laws. First, that's why they lowered the punishment for rape in about 35 states. Based on the Kinsey report, said, well, men can't really control themselves, so we won't make it as serious a crime. No, the dignity of women must be protected against such an evil crime. Well, and again, read Reisman, her book, The Kinsey Cover-Up. Excellent book. Now, we don't want to deny the validity of science. Again, now, Kinsey's science was junk science. It was junk science. And again, Reisman can give you the specifics. Of his 5,000, he had 6,200 people. 1,200 were African American. He eliminated all the African Americans because they didn't agree with him. What? So it was racist at the start. And then another 1,200 of the remaining 5,000 were inmates in prison. That's how you get the figure that homosexuals are 10% of the population? Okay. So, but in good science, in good sociology, we want to see good research. That's important. But we cannot restrict the viewpoint in regard to this research for moral theology. And that moral theology has to be faithful to the supernatural sense of the faith and take into account the spiritual dimension of the human heart and the human heart's vocation to love. That loving people not as tools to be used by me, but loving people because God grants them an inherent dignity on their own. That's what makes pornography evil. You are using these images of people, even if they get paid for it. Sure, some of them may do it out of their own free will. Others are in slavery. Keep that in mind. There are women and children forced into pornography and prostitution as slaves as part of their border crossing fee. When these coyotes bring them across the border from Latin America, how do you think they had to pay? They don't have any money. That's why they're coming to America. They're sold into sexual slavery for pornography and such. And this is something we say, no, people are not to be used by me, but to be loved for their own dignity. This is core to our values. In fact, the behavioral sciences, like all experimental sciences, develop empirical and statistical concepts of normality. That's called the statistical norm. Okay, so that statistics show that this many people steal cars, etc., whatever it might be. But faith teaches us that this norm, this normality, well, a lot of people steal cars, all right? A lot of people in the inner cities are violent and suffer violence. So that's just the way it is, right? No, we say by faith that those norms show the traces of the fall into original sin. We don't say that because it's a statistical norm that everybody tells lies, therefore lies are good. No, this is an indication of what St. Paul taught in Romans chapter 3. We all fall short of the glory of God. We're all sinners. And we all need redemption from our sin. Not justification of the sin that everybody's doing it. So we'll have a group approach. We're all sinning, stick together. God can't send all of us to hell. No. That'll work just about as well as, certain programs of, government insurance. People fall through the cracks. They fall through the cracks. And millions are still uninsured by the government. No, that's not the way it works. God can't send everybody to hell. If you're committing mortal sin, you got to answer for it. Only Christian faith points out to man the way to return to the beginning. Back in Matthew 19, Jesus said to the Sadducees, "For your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so." Why does he go back to the beginning? Because that's before original sin. He goes back to the beginning when God said, "Let us make man in our image and likeness." In the image and likeness of God, let us make him male and female. Let us make them. So that human beings are all made in the image and likeness of God. That's the origin. That's the goal. The goal is not to fit in with the statistics of all the other sinners, but the goal is to be raised up to the level of holiness in the image and likeness of God. And this is very different than empirical normality, statistics. Hence, the behavioral sciences, despite the great value of the information they provide, cannot be considered decisive indications of moral values. That's what Kinsey did. He did his doctorate studying the sexual life of a type of moth. The reason he chose the moth is because the moths only live 3 days. So he could do multi-generational studies in a few months. That's a good method. However, he then used the animals as the basis for sexual norms for us. And since the animals don't feel guilty about what they do sexually, neither should we. Well, the reason that the animals don't feel guilty is that they don't have a conscience. They're following instincts. Duh. And so this is something that we can't use statistics as the basis of morality. Rather, it is the gospel of Jesus Christ that reveals the full truth about being human and about the human moral journey. The gospel proclaims to them God's mercy when they do sin, and that God's mercy is constantly at work to preserve them from despair. Because Christ died for us and gave us his mercy, we don't give up, but rather we keep coming back to him for forgiveness. And if Peter has to forgive 70 times 7, you know that our Lord's going to forgive infinitely. So this is something so that they can also realize that they are saved without merit. They don't earn salvation. It's a free gift bestowed by Christ crucified. God also reminds sinners of the joy of forgiveness. You know, and as we see in the gospel, the woman who washed his feet with her tears and dried them with her hair, and found that, you know, because she loved much, she was forgiven much. And this alone, as a joy inside, gives us the strength to see in the moral law a liberating truth. You become more free from addictions and bad habits as you live out the moral law. And this is a hope that God gives us that is filled by his grace. His grace makes it possible to hope and make it a path of life. So then he goes on. Teaching moral doctrine involves in 113, teaching moral doctrine involves the conscious acceptance of these intellectual, spiritual, and pastoral responsibilities among theologians. Theologians have to realize you have a responsibility to think through the principles God has revealed to us and understand the spiritual ramifications of them and take pastoral responsibility to tell people the truths God has revealed. That is the role of a moral theologian. And that's what takes us way beyond the foolishness and evils that, whether it be Kinsey or any other person that tries to use science in a misguided way to change morality, which, by the way, he explicitly tried to do. That was his goal, to get rid of Christian morality in regards to sexuality and for Christian religion and have sexual freedom. You know, so, and that becomes one of the bases for the sexual revolution of the 60s. 20 years, that's all it took. And it caused a sexual revolution. So, you know, we want the path of hope, and theologians must teach that. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back in a couple of minutes with your questions and comments from our audience, as well as you and your email. So please stay with us. Thank you. First of all, I want to welcome you to do what these nice folks have come. Isn't it a pretty day here? Yeah. The sunshine, 77 degrees, above zero. Above zero. I said I just gave a retreat to some of the priests of the Diocese of Fargo, North Dakota, a couple weeks ago, and it was a little chilly some of the days, but a great group of priests too. I just loved being up there with them, but it is chilly. Here it's 77 above zero. So if you can come and join us, we'd love to have you. Contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966, or go to ewtn.com, and they'll give you information about scheduling of masses, programs, you can be in the audience, places to stay, how to get up to Hansville, pray with the sisters, and all that. And we'd love to have you. And I did invite all those priests up in North Dakota to come. I recommended February, March, when it's still the middle of their winter and we're already starting spring. All right, so let's start off. We have Therese on the line. Hello, Therese.
Hello, Father Mitch. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, ma'am. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Virginia.
Good to have you. And your
Thank
question?
you. Well, it's a little bit controversial.
Okay.
On Saturday, I watched Catholic Culture with Theo White Hudson, and his guest was Michael Hitchborn, who is the head of the Lepanto Institute. And he had done an investigative study and a report on Catholic Relief Services about that they had been providing birth control in the Congo. And the reason I'm calling is on the internet today, of course, Catholic Relief Services are requesting donations, especially this time of year. And, and they do a lot of good work. We all know that. But the comments that were on these requests were pretty much negative for the most part. I'm not going to donate anymore because you provide abortions. Could you sort of give some kind of advice? I would not donate to Planned Parenthood for the reason that they're saying the same thing, that they're doing the same thing. So right now, we don't know whether we should contribute or not.
Yeah. It is, I haven't seen the evidence myself on this. In fact, I missed all that because I was away and I didn't have any contact with it. If it's true that Catholic Relief Services is providing birth control and the abortion pill, they are committing grave sin. That is a grave evil, and it is wrong. And what I would do instead is perhaps try to contact some of the diocesan offices in the Congo to see if it's possible to donate directly to them to buy the food they need and the other services. Go around Catholic Relief Services. If that is the case, again, I haven't seen the evidence one way or the other, and I urge folks to make sure that you confirm that fact. And I'm not saying that the people saying it are lying, and I'm not saying that Catholic Relief Services is hiding. I don't know. I don't have the data. But continue to find out whether that's true or not. If it is true, then that is gravely sinful, and I wouldn't give them any money either. There are other groups, including direct aid to the dioceses of the Congo and many other poor countries, and you can help them out. If they want to take sides with Planned Parenthood and with some of the programs that we've seen our own government insist on, that's been one of the evils I have talked about from the Obama administration, that they tie foreign aid to accepting abortion and birth control. In other words, we will give you food if you let us teach you how to kill your babies. That is evil. That's the blunt, clear side of it. And that is not going to be morally acceptable. Okay? So that would be my strong sense. But if the evidence is against the fact, if they are not doing that, if they are not giving birth control and abortion pills and such, I beg them from Catholic Relief Services to make that clear, make that known, and then, of course, we can glad to cooperate with the work done for the poor, but not at the expense of killing their children. We have a question from our studio. Ma'am, why don't you remain seated? Yeah, thank you. She's so eager.
Catherine.
What's your question, ma'am?
My question is, during the Holy Year of Mercy, I used to go down to the cathedral and offer my prayers.
Sure.
But I was having a problem with the plenary indulgence.
Yes.
I know it helps the person who is alive.
Yes.
And people were telling me, that you're supposed to pray for people who have passed away. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't know which I mentioned names of who I wanted, but I want to know for sure.
Okay, here's the deal.
Who does it cover?
Yeah. It's C, both of the above. You can apply the plenary indulgence to yourself. Okay? You can also apply it for the poor souls in purgatory. And that's a very good thing, and I strongly recommend that as well. Okay? Yeah, we definitely want to do that. All right, let's take another question from a caller. Hello, Paula?
Yes, hi.
Hi, where are you calling from?
Old Orchard Beach, Maine.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
And your question?
Well, I bought your book, Mary, Virgin Mother and Queen.
Oh, thank you.
And it's very interesting. I've been through seminary, a non-denominational seminary, although I'm Catholic. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't really grasp the idea of Mary, the new Eve, and Adam, the new Adam. And a friend of mine was here for Thanksgiving, and she said, well, that's easy. It's all metaphorical. And that didn't really ring a bell with me.
Yeah.
So is that true? Is it metaphorical, or is it true that they're...
It's a great question. Stay on the line with me now. Because you remember how I pointed out the passages in St. Paul. St. Paul is the one who speaks about Christ as the new Adam, correct?
Yes.
And the reason is that the old Adam sinned, but Christ, the new Adam, is without original sin, and he is able to make a renewal of humanity. He renews humanity by being the new Adam, because, as a matter of fact, it relates to what I said a little bit earlier. When Christ, and this is where I think Paul got this from, when Christ said in Matthew 19, it was not so at the beginning. Christ goes back to the beginning of Adam and Eve in regard to marriage, but also in terms of being made in the image and likeness of God. Christ, the new Adam, is going to refashion us into the image and likeness of God. So that's it's more than just a metaphor. There is an image involved here, but it gets at the reality that Christ renews us. But then, what the early fathers of the church did, especially, and I believe I mentioned in my book, Saint Irenaeus of Lyon in the 2nd century, used the image, well, if Christ the new Adam, then the Blessed Virgin Mary is the new Eve. And here's one of the points that's going on, is that there is a reversal of original sin taking place. When Adam and Eve were created, Adam is first, then comes Eve. Here in the gospel, it's the mirror image. First is the new Eve, and then from her comes the new Adam, Christ. and that this is the undoing of the original sin. And in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve are at the tree. Now see, one of the things people don't pay close attention to is that it says in the Bible that Adam was at her side, al-tzad. And so in other words, that dope is being quiet during the whole temptation. He doesn't speak up a word. This is like people, I don't want to get involved in somebody else's temptation and tell them, don't do it. You know, that was what he's supposed to have done. And so what you have, though, is that at the cross, Christ is on the tree and his mother is next to it. Again, as the undoing. And remember why it was after the fall that God named her Eve, which in Hebrew is Chava, from the word chai, to live. So, and Chava is an older Hebrew form of chai, and Chava. But Chava is her name, life. And remember the explanation, because she is the mother of all the living. At the cross, the reversal is, Christ says to the beloved disciple, behold your mother. And because the old Eve is the mother of all the living, Mary, the new Eve, is told that she's the mother of all the disciples. So that and that's why she's the new Eve. And after that, the fathers of the church. I hope that helps a little bit, Paula.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking the question. I'm glad you liked that book. All right, we have a question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
I'm from St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg. Good to have you here. Well, congratulations on your new bishop over there. And so, what's your question?
Question is, you said 70% of Catholics do not attend church.
Right.
How are we going to change that imbalance?
Okay, good question. 70% of Catholics are no longer attending Mass. When I was a little boy, 85% of Catholics went to Mass every Sunday. Back in the 50s, it was 85%. And today it's down to about 30%. Here, one of the issues is they need to have a reason to go. They need to know the reason they're going. And I'm not sure of all that's at stake. There are a variety of reasons people don't go. But one of the problems I suspect is that we have shifted the purpose of Mass to being with the community. You know, that we come here to be a community. Well, a lot of them, you know, a lot of young people say, well, I can find that kind of a community when I go to a rock concert. And in fact, I might like the music better at a rock concert, plus I get to play with my cell phone or my lighter, you know, if I put up with whatever else they do. And so they like the music more than a church. Sometimes they're right. But we focused on us. And we focused on our experience as a little community right here, and we all love each other. Well, they miss out. A lot of times they don't even know that the center of Mass is Jesus Christ himself. And entering into the unbloody sacrifice of Christ on the cross, represented right there, so that you are not just here to hug and show each other a nice time, or to come there to start your gossip before Mass, because it's not the young people who are doing that, by the way. It's the kids my age who are more gossipy and Father's nodding his head here, that people in their 60s and 70s are coming there and it's, oh, I see you got that nice dress on, and that's a great suit, and shut up. Listen to Jesus. That's what you're here for. Keep it down. And, let's, focus on the presence of Christ at Mass, the Redeemer. And then, why do you focus on the presence of Christ? See, that's the next question. He's the Redeemer. He has a truth. We stand up for the gospel. Why? I've got nothing else. We're tired of sitting. The pews are hard over to his church. No. We stand up to hear the words of Jesus Christ and invite him to change us. We profess our faith with the creed. And in other words, it's exactly what the popes have been saying. St. John Paul invented the phrase new evangelization. Pope Benedict XVI continued that. Pope Francis is continuing it. We must do basic evangelization about the importance of who Christ is, the power of his forgiveness, and the power of meeting him. That's why I come to Mass. I want Jesus. I want Jesus inside of me. And that'll build up my community more than if I focus on the community. And that's what we have to do, is basic evangelization, one-on-one, but we do that, okay? I have an email here from Derek. Father Pacwa, my question is related to the gay marriage issue, even if it's a little bit late. One argument in support of such marriage is to compare it to interracial marriage. Supporters of gay unions claim that there was once opposition to mixed marriage, as there is for gay marriage. Some even say the church was opposed to interracial marriage, so the opposition to gay marriage is not worth much. Although some groups to this day may oppose mixed marriage, most notorious being the Ku Klux Klan, what is the church teaching? As far as I know, the church has no real issues with mixed interracial marriage, as long as it's one man, one woman, and the other requirements are met. Besides, an interracial couple can still procreate and have kids, while a gay couple could not. And I think at least a chance to have kids is important to Catholic marriage, right? Derek B. from Maryland. Well, Derek, in fact, there were some denominations that opposed interracial marriage. The Catholic Church was never one of them. This is never the case. Matter of fact, one of our greatest saints from the early church, Saint Athanasius of Alexandria, was a short black man with red hair because his mom, I believe his mom, was Celtic and his father was black. And he was the patriarch of Alexandria. So it's not only that there's no problem with racial mix, it's humans that matter. The DNA of Africans, Asians, Americans, by that I mean Native Americans, and Europeans, is the same DNA that makes them human. And we share that in common. And therefore, there's absolutely no issue in the Catholic Church about interracial marriage, and there hasn't been. If anybody said that, that was their issue, not church teaching. But you're exactly correct that people of different races have mixed since people of different races have met. That's reality. People fall in love with whom they fall in love. That's reality. And it's no difficulty. Whereas, as a matter of fact, if anything, mixing in with too small a population is harmful to that population. It's a good thing, so that's an issue. But people of the same gender cannot have children. They cannot procreate at all. If they have children it's only because they go outside that relationship. They must commit adultery. If you considered it marriage, they would have to be adulterous to have kids, which is the opposite of the case for heterosexual marriage. And it's not only, you can go online and look up the research, but because doctors are not allowed to talk about this, they'll lose their license. But virtually 100% of people in the same sex, part of our culture are infected with sexual diseases. Not only because of passing them on, but the activities themselves cause disease, because it's not part of the way we're made. And that's something that we have to pay attention to. We have another question from our studio audience. Ma'am? Oh, who is it? Oh, here. Yes, ma'am. Where are you from?
Yes, Father. If a couple is living together and one or the other has been divorced and they are waiting for an annulment, they get the annulment. Why are they still allowed to get married in the Catholic Church?
Are they still allowed? Yes, they are. This is something, they're living together. Now, there are a couple things. If they live together as brother and sister, there's no matter of sin. Though there may be a problem of causing scandal, because people will make their own assumptions, which, may not always be as virtuous as that couple. But, we shouldn't try to give scandal. We should avoid that. But if they are living as man and wife together, then it's a serious sin. It's a mortal sin. And they need to repent. But they wouldn't be the first couple to live together before marriage that we call to repent. And in fact, there is one of the reasons I strongly recommend against living together is that the engagement period is a very privileged moment. When you get married, you have to trust each other to be faithful. In any couple, there are times you can be alone. You can find ways to cheat on your spouse. So the relationship must be based on trust, right? If a man and woman learn together that they can wait before marriage, they don't have to engage in relations. They don't have to be intimate. They don't die. You don't die if you remain chaste before marriage. You don't get a heart attack. You don't get cancer for that. No, it's safe. It's okay. It's okay. And in that time, you learn I can trust you, and you can trust me. I'm able to be faithful to you and wait, because in marriage there are times you must wait. Times of travel, military deployment, illness, sometimes after childbirth. There are lots of times couples need to wait and abstain from intimacy. And that's part of life. You learn if they can do so before marriage, then they can do so in marriage. And I can trust you, you can trust me. That's why there is that period of waiting. And that's why people who don't wait have high divorce rates. They didn't learn that they can trust each other. At times, it's necessary to abstain. So it's an important issue. All right, I'm afraid we have run out of time. Thank you all for being here. And may the Lord bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you, lead you in all of your ways by his peace, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And as you know, election's over. People were scared. They weren't buying houses. They weren't doing anything. They were scared. Okay, we can relax. The country is moving along. Keep an eye on the politicians. Don't relax on that. But we do need your support to keep us going. So remember to put us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill, and we'll be able to pay our bills, politicians or not. Thank you.